welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Fricke. Thanks for tuning in. All right, well, Steve and Braden, welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm excited to have you guys today. So my hope for today is for us to have like a Greater New Orleans, market report, and to kind of date it. Here we are. It's towards the end of August 2024. To kind of date what we're talking about here. And let's kind of first start off, introduce, Braden, go ahead, if you don't mind introducing
Sure.
yourself, kind of tell people who you are, where you're based out of, and what do you do? What are you focused on?
All right. Braden Smith. I'm real estate broker, owner, realtor, and real estate investor. So I do a little bit of everything in the residential real estate space. Although here in the last probably year or more, it's been more dealing with brokerage stuff than investing stuff as we were trying to grow the brokerage.
Mhm.
But I've dabbled in pretty much everything, from rental properties, flips, spec builds, wholesale, kind of you name it. Um, I've lived in New Orleans since the end of '99, so I'm not a native, but I am native to Louisiana. Grew up in Lake Charles.
I didn't
Um,
know that.
yeah, but I moved here at the end of '99, and I've been here since. And actually, it's funny. My original plan was I was only going to be here for probably 3 to 5 years, and then I was moving, and here we are, 24 years later, and I'm still here.
Sounds like Steve's going to say something a little bit similar, but with an Aussie accent. Excellent. So, Steve, introduce yourself for folks. You've been on the show before, but let's recap.
Yeah, Aussie Steve. I run a real estate acquisition company, Home by Louisiana. Where we buy off-market properties, predominantly the wholesale. I take some down myself though as well. Mainly like rental properties, like long-term buy and hold. Then I
Yep.
do have a short-term rental. I will flip a wholesale sometimes, but that's not my core skill. Don't look to me advice on that. But
No,
definitely
I won't.
acquisition, wholesaling, and rentals is definitely my sweet spot.
Sure, and a lot of people know that you and I have a portfolio together. We do a lot together. So the goal with bringing both you guys on today is I just want to have a conversation. What's going on in the Greater New Orleans area? So um, let's kind of first start off with what are we seeing with buyers in the market? So Braden, I know you can speak to both on and off market, but what are you seeing on market with buyers right now?
Buyers in the market right now are being much more selective, picky, and choosy about things. They're definitely asking sellers for more concessions. Um, as I'm sure everybody's aware, affordability is at an all-time low nationwide, and especially here with the higher mortgage rates, the higher insurance cost. Property taxes have gone up, and
Mhm.
so on and so forth. So the buyers are looking at that and saying, well, everything is costing me more. So if I need something from you now to
Yeah.
make this sale happen. So we're definitely seeing a lot more of that, which is the polar opposite of what we were seeing during the COVID boom, where buyers had no leeway, no
Yeah.
leverage.
Would you say it's a buyer's market in the Greater New Orleans area? Is the data speaking to that?
So I can say our market, it- it's weird. We have a very strange market
We
right now.
do.
The data doesn't necessarily correlate to what we're seeing in the market. Although a lot of the data that we look at is lagging data, so it
Mhm.
takes some time for that data to catch up to the market. But the market is behaving like a buyer's market for the most part,
Right.
with exception to some select pockets and certain properties. The 100% move-in ready properties, flips that are in what you would consider a more affordable range seem to be still selling pretty quickly, pretty easily.
Mhm.
Um, some of your high dollar stuff is sitting a little longer at this point. At one point, say 900K and up was moving faster than the middle road stuff.
Mhm.
The lower end stuff and the high end stuff is what was moving the best, but we've started to see a lot of the higher end stuff start to kind of sit now too,
Yeah.
while everybody's looking for that affordability, whatever that means to that person.
Yeah. For sure. Steve, so what are you seeing with buyers now? You deal a lot with investors off market,
Yeah.
but then you're also seeing things from their, like you're hearing things from them on their perspective. So what is that?
Um,
What are you seeing with that?
I mean, similar to Braden in that they're being more selective. The probably also what I see is a lack of the less experienced buyers that we might have seen in 2020, 21. It was like real estate was hot, everyone was getting in the market. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of those like new to the industry people have really gone quiet. But I am seeing a lot of the more seasoned people still buying. They
Yeah.
are being selective. They do want, it needs to be a deal, for them to
Sure.
pull the trigger. I am seeing some of the people too, like rental, particularly rentals buyers are more active, and even some of my people who generally do flips, I'm noticing them doing more rentals as well. So,
Hmm.
I think it's still active. As a wholesaler, I am working harder to keep building my buyers list like we are. Whereas in 21, I'll just send an email and move a deal. Now we're using public records, we're scraping data, we're seeing who the new buyers are, we're
Yeah.
calling them, we're onboarding them. So we're working harder to keep our transactions going.
Yeah. No, for sure. One of the things that I'm seeing, and so I do a lot on market, off market, but seeing even like pocket listing stuff with agents or just various things. But what I'm seeing is that buyers don't have the ability to buy something if it needs a little bit of work, or they're scared, right? Like, because I mean, I've been tracking, I think I'm on week 6 or 7. I'd have to look at my phone, either week 6 or 7 of conversations around layoffs with just people in public, whether it's an appointment, at an event with family and a friend brings it up or whatever, where people are talking about it. And so I think people are afraid to get into a house that like might have some, it might basically push their budget, and they're like, "Hey, so anything that needs just a little bit of work, I'm finding that it's sitting." So like there's a house that I know right now that it has dropped over 100 grand, and which, it was listed in the mid 300s. So it's dropped over 100 grand, and it literally needed flooring, paint, a stove, and one bathroom could use some a little sprucing up, but nothing crazy, right?
Hmm.
I'm
Roof was good, AC was good, like stuff like that. And so nothing crazy. But I'm seeing that people are just being like, "Hey, I'm either I can't or I won't get into that."
I'm hearing the same thing for the on-market stuff. Obviously, the off-market stuff, my buyers like to add value, so they want the issues, but they want to buy that properties that have problems, but they're going to fix all those problems, so they can
Right.
have a market-ready property to sell. So, but I'm hearing if you don't do a full nice renovation, those properties are sitting. I'm sure you're probably seeing that, Braden.
Yeah. I think like for the flippers out there, the quality needs to be there now. Where I think they
Yeah,
were getting away with some things they shouldn't have got away with
Hmm.
during COVID.
sure.
Kind of lipstick on a pig type renovations,
Well,
and
sure. And
those are
but
definitely
sellers
harder to
too,
move
yeah.
now.
What Asa said something recently at that Baton Rouge meetup. He said that it's either price or product, and right now product matters.
Yeah.
And so if you're not doing a great, so like even so I would almost be curious, even if you're wholetailing, I don't know what that looks like, but like where you're getting it off market at a great deal and you're just cleaning it out and you're putting it up on the market, I think you're gonna have to be a lot more potentially aggressive on the price to still
Absolutely.
move it.
I would definitely
Um,
agree with that. I haven't done a wholesale deal for that very reason in quite some time because if I'm going to do it, it's got to be deeply below market for me to feel comfortable
yeah,
actually taking it down and putting it on the MLS.
yeah,
Yeah, I think yeah, 100% right. The product matters, and the just reducing the price a little bit doesn't necessarily bring a buyer, because I
yeah,
think the buyers just aren't. There's not as many, so
yeah,
it's not as if, hey, I just drop the price and those buyers are there. Like
sure.
you're dropping it for no one often.
Well, and I mean, we've got a rental that's in rental grade, and like here's the thing, we don't want to go renovate it to the nines because it's just a quirky property. The comps are like, comps are not, it's a little rural. So it's like we're renovating it to what? To what end, right? Like we're
Right.
not confident. So it's like, well, we don't want to go bet on the product part. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna go to the price, and I think we're at 160 right now. And even if we dropped it to 110, do we know if it would even sell at that price point? Like, I don't know.
I,
Yeah. And if you're
That's the
going to
hard part.
focus on the product, the quality, I think it's got to be in the right location too.
Yeah.
I've seen some of them that are in good, uh, I would say not necessarily high end areas, but just
Desirable.
upper end
Yeah.
areas that are hotter markets where I've seen some recent full renovations where they did a complete full total renovation that was done really nicely and it's under contract in like 6 days.
Yeah.
Where if you got
Yeah.
something like you said needs a little bit of work, it's been on the market for 100 days, you know?
Well, and look, last night, so last night we were looking at some houses and there was one literally there is a 200 square foot difference between two houses on the same street. So, other than that, same bed, bath, but just 200 square foot difference. One of them is cosmetically not upgraded, like it's stuck in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, early 2000s. The other one, nicely renovated. I'm telling you, 20 to 30 in work, there's either 110,000, I think it's either 100 or 110,000 in price difference.
Wow.
And it's literally on the same street, things like that. And so I'm looking at that and I'm just like chomping at the bit, right? So we'll talk more about some
Yeah.
thoughts on strategy. So stay tuned. But so let's go and let's switch from okay, so that's what we're seeing with buyers. Um what about with sellers? What are you seeing with sellers in this marketplace? We'll start. Braden, go ahead.
Stubborn.
Yeah,
That if I had to sum it up in one word, stubborn.
yeah.
A
Why?
lot of sellers, and I'm seeing it both on and off market, and you're probably seeing it off market too, where there's a lot of sellers out there that still think they can get prices from a couple years ago.
Yeah,
That's like reality just hasn't set in for them yet, or they're just being stubborn and refusing to accept the fact that you can't get the same price that you could get 2 years ago. It's just not going to happen. So I'm seeing a lot of that with sellers where they're just not really willing to budge on their price. Now, a lot of them, as far as on market sellers, they are willing to offer some concessions to a buyer because they realize that they're going to probably have to do that, especially if the listing agent has set the proper expectations with them and filled them
yeah,
in on how the market's working now. And I don't have an issue with any sellers as far as explaining to them that, hey, in the current market, just be prepared. You're probably going to get asked for some closing costs. You're going to get asked for some after inspection repairs and/or repair credits. Be prepared for those things, but it's tougher to get them to come to a reasonable price from the start.
yeah.
I
What are you seeing
I
on
mean,
off market?
I definitely echo that. I mean, the sellers still are unrealistic. It's not the same. I mean, 2020, 21, they were like super bullish, and they're not that same level of enthusiasm on prices, but they don't. I think as property people, we look around and we do see a buyer's market.
Right.
We do see where we're at. And most of the sellers don't see that, and they are holding
Yeah,
on to old prices. So we finding that it's not easy to make the deal. We personally will just negotiate. What we do know is that they won't get the price they're asking. So our approach to that is we're going to make the offer that works. We're going to be nice about it, and we're going to follow up. And if they say they got a higher offer, we say cool, like you should
Yeah,
take
you
that
should take it.
because it's probably
and
not
hope.
there. Or if it is, if someone did make the offer, they're not going to close. So we're
Yeah,
confident in our pricing, and we will just follow up until they come around. I think though um, there's not a lot of distress in the market. I'm sure you see it. Like we're in like I'm sure you see a lot of distress because that's
that's my
that's your
specialty.
specialty.
Yeah,
But like as a market sense, there isn't a lot of distress, even though
Yeah.
things are bad.
I've
And
noticed the same, and it's kind of odd. It feels weird because a lot of these sellers, even though they're, say on the off market side, certain lists I've marketed to this year that I thought would be killer list have been lackluster at best
yeah,
because there's just no real motivation there because they don't, for whatever reason, the distress level is not there. Even though some of these people are kind of in a bad situation, they don't
mhm.
really seem motivated to do anything about it.
Well, I think a lot of it is what are they trying to escape, but also what are they going to?
Right.
And so that's the big issue is some people are pitting up with things because, well, I still have that 3% loan.
100%.
Right.
And so I'm going to put up with this because, well, the only place I can go is this 6% loan.
Right. I think there's a
And
lot of fear on that side of where they're going to. There's a lot of fear revolving around that as far as just because everything costs so much right now. They don't know what
mhm,
they're going to be able to do if they sell this property.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I mean, I even speak to my own experience. Like, I think if you're not motivated, you make that decision. Do I cut my price to make this sale? But like, I don't know the buyer's even there, or do I hold on? So like, personally, I had four properties on the market 2 months ago. I sold one. The other three, I'm in the process of renting out. Right,
yeah.
and I said, and the two of them we went together. So I know you're aware of that. So
Like
like,
we're deciding that it's like, again, am I gonna drop it to what point? And because we don't have to
yeah.
sell, we're like, "Okay, great. I think one of them we're gonna put it for rent and say, for rent or for sale, whatever, and have ones first is we're
You
gonna.
know, we're
So,
seeing. Oh, I'm sorry.
okay.
I was going to say we're seeing a lot of that with the on the MLS too,
Yeah,
with listings.
yeah.
A lot of listings are going both for lease and for sale. I've got some
Mhm.
of my listings that we've had to do that with because we're just not getting enough activity on the for sale.
Yeah,
So the sellers are like, well, maybe we can at least lease it to slow the bleeding some here.
yeah,
So you're seeing a lot of that, even with new construction. A lot of the new construction, the builders get down to the lowest they can get down to basically just not
to
lose it,
cover the construction
right?
line. Yeah,
And they're still having trouble, and so they're having to well, let's put it up for lease and see if we can lease it.
I think, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because like I'll use our example as well. Like we want to sell, we don't have to sell. So then you make that if you're making a strategic decision, I think it is a buyer's market out there. So like, why if I don't need to sell into this market, I do believe it'll get better in the
eventually.
eventually. So like I don't need to take this cut, this
Yeah.
hit. I'll just rent it out and I'll sell it when the market gets better. So
Right.
I think even people listing, I think that's why the market's weird because then
Mhm.
the prices, people haven't capitulated. The
Yeah.
prices aren't dropping to meet that demand. There's just
Well, so here's the other big thing. I had a guy call me off the radio. He has a free and clear house. He is packed in a storage unit. Just pulled it off after 150 days on the market. Or he might actually go on the full 180. Pulled it off the market, and he's like, I'm ready to go. But what he doesn't want is a mortgage. So he has a free and clear. He wants a free and clear. And so, there's a little bit creative on that world. But he is literally paying for a storage unit every month. He is ready to go. His house sat, and I said, talk to me about the feedback you got in your house. Like, why didn't you own a free and clear? Why didn't you just drop the price? And he goes, well, we dropped it a little bit, but like I didn't want to drop more than that because that has to be my buying power, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, okay. He goes, but the biggest issue was my neighbor. My neighbor has a mortgage. They actually moved into another house, and so they're juggling 2 mortgages, and they've already, got the loan, moved. So now they have a vacant house with a mortgage, and they're just slashing the price frequently.
yeah.
And so what I find is what sellers are dealing with is everyone else is willing and dealing. And so a lot of people talk about that there's a lot of equity in the marketplace. I beg to say that depending on the market, that equity is basically it's at risk, right?
Mhm.
Because other people's, you know, wheeling and dealing is tomorrow's comps, right?
Right.
And then on top of that, it's well, I've got something else to say about that. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Like, are y'all seeing that like when you go to like on the listing site and you go to list a property, are you paying attention to what the other listings are doing, the active
Absolutely.
listings?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're seeing a lot of exactly what you said. There's you know on all of our listings, any good listing agent, that's you're going to look at actives, you're going to look at pendings, you're going to look at closed. Obviously, closed are important for pricing, but you still want to see what has gone pending, how many days has it taken to go pending, and then what is your current active competition in that area too, which is your
Mhm.
active listing. So you want to look at all those things and keep an eye on those things for the time that you are listed on the market. And we are seeing a lot of that where you have one or two houses here and there that are dropping significantly, and others are kind of sticking to their guns and being stubborn, and it's kind of throwing the market all out of whack.
Well, like that one neighborhood I mentioned we looked at last night on the same street, there's 2 houses, maybe just a 200 square foot, the other one's just 200 square foot bigger, but it was over 100 grand difference. And I'm like, if we can go ahead and do the 20 in work that this one needed, why not go for the one that's 100? And we could still offer less,
Hmm.
right? The negotiating's not done. That's just an asking price. And so there's a level there. It's like, um, again, we don't know where sellers are, right? And so the other thing that I'm seeing is so not just some sellers willing and dealing with the equity that they have, is you've got sellers who bought during 2021 and they were very competitive that are now trying to sell
Yep.
and they're struggling because basically they're going to have to bring money to the table to
I've got
sell.
a couple of clients of mine, past clients. One of them, they don't really need to sell, but they kind of have an interest in potentially selling. There's no real need there. The other one is kind of in a tougher situation and is close to the point of needing to sell. So I've run comps for them recently and done an analysis, and I had to go back and tell one of them. you're looking at probably a list price 50, 60K below what you paid for it. And
Mm.
you paid, it was just like I said, 2021, 3 years ago. And actually, they both bought in 2021. And the other one was, they were looking at probably 60, 70K below what they paid for it based on the current sales in the market, you know?
Because of people are willing and dealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other part of that is, I mean, pretty early on in a loan, you're not paying down much, and
No,
so you're not getting a lot of
it's not
amortization.
till you get to what's year 7, 8, somewhere around there.
And even if you're in a better position and the house price is flat, I mean, you add your agent, if you're an FHA loan, you add
Yeah,
agent commissions and closing costs, you're still
yeah,
underwater. Like
yeah,
if you got to bring money to the table to close.
yeah. And so we're seeing some of that, right? So as a creative
Mhm.
investor, I'm getting calls all day long with stuff like that. I am seeing short sales come around where
I haven't
people,
seen any recently.
I
yeah.
closed one recently. Couple not.
Well,
It's
I stopped
whispers.
foreclosure, so I
Yeah.
do, there is a level. I
Right.
am in some echo chambers of like
Yeah.
either high distress. I'm seeing a lot of things.
I
So
know I saw a recent news article, or I think, if I'm not mistaken, they said it was something, I think it was Louisiana as a whole, though, saying
underwater.
there was
Yeah.
like 11% of
Hmm.
mortgages out there that were seriously underwater, meaning
Hmm.
they owe more than it's worth, and they're 3+ months behind on paying.
And there was they actually named, if it's the same one that I'm talking that I'm thinking about, they actually named it by parish, and they were naming some places in Baton Rouge and in New Orleans for that underwater.
I must say, I think I find Orleans probably worse than other parishes, particularly from the off market point of view. Like I think like Jefferson moves pretty well off market. All the other parishes do. Baton Rouge is actually really nice,
Hmm.
but Orleans just I think people are also just fed up with permit process and there's other stuff and frustration in the city. So I do find Orleans to be probably the worst of the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know personally know several different investors, as well as half a dozen builders or more, that within the last year or two, they're like, I'm done. I'm not working in New Orleans anymore. They're like,
Sure.
I'm just fed up with it. Like, I'm
Hmm.
just, for whatever reason, or various reasons,
Yeah.
they're like, I'm Jefferson, St. Tammany, St. Charles. That's all I'm dealing with from here on out.
Yeah. But as a contrarian, I like that though because there's better deals in all these. But it
Right.
definitely is the truth.
So let's go into investors. So what are we seeing, investors doing in this market right now? Like, so we talked about buyers, which some of it was investors. We talked about sellers, which some of it has been investors. But specifically, let's talk about what we're seeing investors doing right now in this market.
Well, I say more rentals. More rentals.
Mm.
Like I said, I see buyers that are more known to me, flippers, doing a high percentage of rentals. They're still flipping, but just
They're evening out
yeah. And
or a little
Or
bit
or are they
preference.
starting as a flip and then turning into a rental?
there's that. So a bit of both. So yeah,
Right.
100%. Like
Yeah.
back out of a flip will be to burr it or whatever, and I've
Plan
definitely seen
B.
that. But some people too are also taking a longer term view and they're buying them to hold on because they think it's a good market to buy now and
Right.
probably a better market to sell later. So I'm seeing that the long term investors tend to be pretty active in my network, and the flippers are less. The flips are still going on. You buy right, you're going to do well, but there's less than
And
Yeah.
previous.
a lot of my full-time flippers they've been struggling. You can tell
Hmm.
between finding deals that actually make sense, but also you can tell that like some deals haven't gone right.
You can definitely tell there's less flips going on all over, just by when you're out and about, running around, driving around. There's far fewer dumpsters and
Yeah.
yards and driveways than you've seen in years past.
Yeah.
That, that's
Depends
that,
on pockets,
that's
Yeah.
interesting, actually. Just the distinction between the full time flipper and part time, because that's true. I didn't think of it in those terms, but it's like because the part time flippers have stopped, right?
Mhm.
Like that that
Hmm.
that that's that like. But the full time flippers, they need to keep going. Like
You don't
you
have a
don't.
Yeah.
choice.
Well, yeah, because you don't
Some of them
stop.
might have crews that they're
Well,
like,
yeah.
"Hey, we're doing this just to keep our crews
i-
till
Right.
things get better."
if you stop, you're shutting up shop. Like if you stop now, you're then not ready for the good market. If you're a full time person, you're in the good and the bad, and and the truth is, like, there's never a good market. And what I mean by that is, it's either like a really good time to sell, like we had in 2020,
Mhm.
21. It was a fantastic time to sell. If you had a
Hmm.
I
property
wish
to
I
sell,
sold more.
yes, yeah, you do more.
Right.
But it sucks to buy.
Yeah.
You
Tough to
you you
buy.
had you bought had to buy crap deals, and now it's more of a buyer's market. So it's tough to sell. If you're selling, it's tough, but it's a great time to buy. So I think the full time investor, they just
Dollar
they
cost
yeah they
averaging.
yeah they
Yeah.
and they change into those.
Um, I think one of the other things I'm seeing with investors is how are they handling what wasn't planned? So whether it was the market change, we had the interest rates, insurance, now we have the property tax reassessment here, which we'll talk about here soon. Just all of those things, like it's the idea of you can make plans until you get punched in the face, right? Everyone's got a great plan if they get punched in the face, right? And so the thing that I'm seeing right now with investors is, what are they doing when they get punched in the face? And the most at risk is the one who bought a marginal deal.
Yeah, for
So if they
sure.
bought a great deal, it downsized to a good deal. But if it was a good deal, marginal, it downsized to a bad deal.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that there's a lot of bad deals out there that investors are having to, like, basically, they're having to come to terms with, I don't have a great deal.
Yeah.
Similar to those sellers, right? Like, I overpaid, and this
Right.
is not the best time for me to cash in on that.
Yeah, and I've seen it over the last couple to a few years where I'm sure y'all probably agree the profit margins got squeezed thinner and thinner too, especially for flippers and builders, because just the high level of competition, where it got harder and harder to hit uh, what I would consider my target ROI. And there's people out there taking 10% returns, and I'm like, I'm not doing a flip for 10%. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
I could go put money in an index mutual fund and hit probably 8%, So what's the point of taking on all this risk for 10%?
And those people making those deals are probably the ones that aren't buying now. They're trying to like deal with these issues. And what I found is the people who are more disciplined through those good times, they're the ones that like they're there before and they're here now and they're buying now and taking advantage.
Yeah.
So you did good not to make those bad deals.
Right, right.
And I'm seeing some old school investors come out to play that I
Yeah.
haven't seen in a minute. I'm like, hey.
Well, that was Vina Jones Cox did a presentation on like wholesaling and working through a recession about 2 years ago in Ohio, and her point was she's been through those cycles. That's why I like her. And her point was you see the old school people come back because
They go away during the
they
up
come
market,
when things get worse and they're aggressive and they'll buy
Yeah, that makes sense. They back out when the frenzy's happening and then come back in when it kind of dies down a little bit when it's better to buy.
Right.
I think it's Warren Buffett, right? Saying, be fearful when everyone's greedy and be greedy when everyone's fearful. And I think that's a really important philosophy in investing and property.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing investors. So here's another topic. Speaking of fear, I'm seeing investors leaving Louisiana, or at least leaving New Orleans. We were talking about Orleans. Are y'all seeing that? I mean, obviously we have a lot of things almost building a perfect storm, right?
I'd say it's not even just investors; it's just people in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I've personally talked to past clients of mine, friends, family, friends of friends, acquaintances, and I've heard from dozens and dozens of people that they basically have hit the point of that's the last straw. I am making moves to leave the state.
Mhm.
I hear it too. I hear it. It definitely comes up. I don't see it a lot though. Like I do hear people who are like, I'm not buying here anymore, and then like I'll share a good deal with them like the next week and they'll buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, but definitely it's out there. I mean,
I would say
there is some population decline. It's not a massive amount, but it is net decline. So it's out there.
And I would agree with you that I think it's more talk than action. It's a lot of people, I guess, venting frustrations and things like that. But
Right.
the data doesn't show, like you said, doesn't show a huge population loss. But I think Louisiana historically pretty much loses people every year, and has for many, many years.
Right.
We don't really have any manufacturing here or
major jobs.
or tech jobs or things like
We
that.
have oil and gas,
It's oil
which
and
is
gas
cyclical. I mean,
and
they're all going through layoffs right now.
right, and hospitality and tourism, and especially in the New Orleans area. I mean, that's pretty much
And medical university as well. So I think there's like it's not a booming economy, but like it's got several industries from my perspective. My general feeling is it can't get much worse. That's what I think.
right.
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm optimistic. So maybe take what I say with a grain of salt.
Because I do want to hear your predictions in a little bit, but I do think people are getting pressed to where they're thinking of making a decision, and maybe they're talking about it, but maybe it takes time, maybe
It takes
whatever
some
that looks
planning
like.
for
It takes some
sure,
planning.
especially if people are packing up their whole family and moving out of state. That's not something you just do on a whim.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, at least I don't think you should.
But hey guys, Courtney, Fricke here. We've got Aussie Steve. And look, if you have a deal that needs to get moved, Southeast Louisiana, even in South Mississippi, we're your folks. We are the largest dispo company, really in the greater New Orleans area, even Southeast Louisiana. We have great contacts in South Mississippi as well. Steve, why do we move more deals than others?
just we're very deep in this market. So Greater New Orleans can be really confusing for national wholesalers. The comps are hard. We change block for block. We got flood zones. We get a lot of hurricanes and the likes, and just a lot of the national platforms don't have the buyers on their list. So we are deep with buyers, but we're deep with relationships, which is really important in this market. So we'd love JVing with out-of-state investors.
Like I said, we do a ton of business with other investors. So go to homebuyerlouisiana.com/Courtney, fill out the information. We'll get in touch with you and we'll move this deal along. There's a level there that'll be interesting to watch, right? I definitely think some people are pulling back and maybe not being as aggressive in this in the Louisiana market. Like, hey, I own, maybe I'm not selling what I own, but I may not be buying a lot more. Or they're starting to research other markets. And so
And I think, unfortunately, what it comes down to for a lot of folks and families is that it's just affordability. It's gotten to a point where people are struggling to be able to afford to stay here, unfortunately, with all the increases. And of course, number one issue is the insurance.
yeah.
It's I
Let's
think
talk about that. Let's talk about this insurance crisis. So because I mean, people don't understand like that Louisiana has been suffering with insurance for years now.
mhm.
So what are you seeing? What are you guys seeing with insurance?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't heard or seen any talk of relief on the near horizon.
Yeah.
It kind of is what it is. Supposedly, the new governor and new insurance commissioner are supposed to be working on things to attract insurers back to the state to
Hmm.
bring in some more competition that would ideally help rates go down. But I haven't seen an actual plan from them. All I
Yeah.
hear is talk from them that, oh yeah, we're working on it. Okay, show me the plan.
Sure.
What are you actually doing? Where are the insurers at? And before the previous governor and insurance commissioner left office, they had a plan for what, wasn't it like 41 or 42 million dollars to bring insurers back to the state? And
Yeah.
it's
It
like,
brought.
what happened to that?
I
Where'd the
think it
money
brought.
go?
I think it brought 9, and half of them were already in the state. They just expanded. If I remember
Expanded
right,
markets.
they expanded their coverage or their like how many policies they would allow. And I mean, at the end of the day, sure that can help, but at the same time, we're trying to bring more, where it's less monopolies, more competition.
Right. I mean, my main
Um,
insurance broker I've dealt with here lately had told me since Hurricane Ida, post Hurricane Ida, we lost like 35 carriers.
yeah, they either went belly up or left the state or stopped taking new
Yeah.
policies. Yeah,
The insurance has been devastating for the state. Like in Greater New Orleans. Worse than interest rates. Interest rates went up a lot, but like insurance, way more of an impact on affordability. I know personally a lot of my like T&I, part of my principal, my PITI payments, my taxes, insurance, like often half of the payment, which isn't normal. I will say though, I think it's plateaued. I was speaking to my broker just this other day, and he was telling me what he's seen is his average rate increase is now 2 to 3%. So it's pretty much stable. And he says
yeah.
when he gets a big one now, like 10% is like a big one, whereas it was like 25, 30% a little while ago. So
So hopefully they won't go up much
yeah,
more.
his perspective is not really going down, but it has
Plateau.
stabilized,
Yep.
and he's hopeful that at some point there's some competition coming back, and that will drive some prices down. It's
Mhm.
not in the short term, but there is, I think, just the cost of climate change and being on the coast.
Mhm.
It's not going back to where it was.
Yeah.
There is a high level of
Yeah.
insurance, and now I do feel better that other states, we were the first to get it. So I think we were like really the first after Hurricane Ida, we got hit with it. But now,
So like,
California's having a lot of issues with fires, so they're
yep.
getting issues. Florida, obviously, Texas, I think is starting to
There's
get it.
even some of the coastal, yeah. So like coastal
Well,
areas.
that's actually what he told me. He was saying he's now starting to see the Mississippi's and Alabama's going up because they were
Mhm.
even though they're on the same, they've been insulated, but now they're going
They
up.
are starting to go up.
But I think we're plateaued, which it isn't. We're not plateauing in a great
Yeah.
spot, but at least it's not accelerating.
Well, and so that's a huge part because I mean, with buyers, investors, civilian buyers, whatever you want to call it, is across the board, people look at that monthly payment and all the things that affect it, right? And so one of the big things with insurance has been, so I know Sage Sure came into the state. So Sage Sure,
Yeah, they've been the cheapest
they've been,
around.
yeah, and I've been able to get off of Louisiana Citizens for some of my
Yeah,
properties for that.
me too.
But something, so that's been great, right? But at the same time, location matters.
Yeah.
And so what I have found by going into more of the North Shore and into Baton Rouge, and really being mindful of really old properties, and then also being mindful of Orleans and such. Knowing that I mean, literally, I was telling you guys before we got rolling that, it was like a, what was it, a 1996 build home, and I was going to replace the roof, and it was a policy in the threes, and I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" I haven't seen that in a quick minute. I have a 2006 build with an original roof. I was not replacing the roof, and it was in the twos, and I was so glad. And so there's a level there that like, and these were both going to be for rentals, and so it's like a level there that I'm surprised to see those. Now, they're not the, $900 a year policy that we wish we would still see,
Right.
We're not quite
Which may
regressing.
never happen again.
It may never, but like the world, the idea here is let's hope that we may see some things.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. Location does matter, and the property matters. I know New Orleans East got hit pretty bad because it's near the water, and I own a bunch in New Orleans East. Baton Rouge is good.
Mhm.
I think where we're at now is, I think historically for investors, and correct me if I'm wrong, like insurance wasn't a big deal. Like when you're underwriting a deal, you're not even really getting a quote. Like you know it's going to be like a decent amount. Now, now insurance is a part of underwriting. And
Yes,
I'm
for
saying on a buy
sure.
like when
Yeah.
you're looking at a deal, you need to know what is this going to cost.
Yep.
So I think we just need to be mindful of that. And just like you look at your rehab costs, your ARVs,
Hmm.
insurance is a
Yeah.
component. We have to deal with it now.
Yeah,
Flood
100%
as well.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it used to be when I was looking at a potential flip, I'm like, the homeowners is going to be around this.
Yeah,
It's fine,
Yeah.
you know. And now it's like we need a quote.
yeah,
I don't
100.
trust I don't trust what
Right.
I think I
There's no
know.
telling what it might be, you know. So obviously on an
Yeah.
older house, it's going to be more. If you're closer
Yeah.
to water, it's going to be more. But there's just
Yeah.
no telling a lot of times with some of these houses. I mean, I had my personal house in Metairie. It's not a big house either. I was over 7 grand a year at one point on my
Yeah.
homeowners. I've got it down now, but I'm like 3,400 a year or something when it used to be, oh, I want to say like 1,600, 1,800.
Yeah. So that's an adjustment, right? And I do think the state's doing some things. A lot of people, obviously, we can argue that it may or may not be enough. But there are things that are changing within the building code to try to get us in line with what's going on, like for example in
Hmm.
Florida, where it's like basically, just hardier builds, properties that can actually handle the storms that we face. And so that when a storm comes through, every roof doesn't blow off. That's a few more stick, and there's, little things like that. So it'll be interesting to see, what continues to happen on the building front,
Yeah.
for this.
Uh, from what um from what my insurance broker told me, with the main cause of the insurance increases is the reinsurance market.
Yep. So on the back end,
They've
it's
and a lot of people don't realize that the insurance companies get insurance for
Yeah,
themselves, which is the reinsurance market, and so those companies raised it on them, and then they pass that down to the consumer,
yep,
and then on top of that, your replacement cost jumped up
100%.
considerably as
yep.
well because construction costs, materials, and labor are up 40+% over the last 4 to 5 years.
I remember for over a year during 2020 and 2021 when lumber costs were crazy, I was on the radio every weekend being like, and I'd give a tip or anything like that, but I'd be like, "Hey, go look at your insurance
Mhm.
policy and see how much your replacement costs." Because what I didn't want to see was, a house that would cost 300 to replace. I didn't want them to be insured for 190.
Yeah,
Hmm.
And because just the cost of all that, the cost for it,
Yeah, I can give you
and
an example of replacement costs and how ridiculous it is right now. On my personal house, when I was shopping policies to try to get away, I was on Citizens at over 7K a year. I'm like, I've got to get myself something else. So I'm shopping policies because I put a fortified roof on it in January, which helped tremendously. But I'm shopping policies, and the cheapest one I found, I go back to him. I'm like, I did the math on it. I'm like, they're saying the replacement cost is almost 240 a foot. I'm like,
mm,
I could build this house back for no more than 150 a foot. And he's like, I know, it doesn't make any sense. He goes, and I've told the insurance carriers that. And he goes, you know what they told me? They said, you don't like it, don't write for us. That was their answer.
mhm,
yeah. So unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast, and, I do fear for our area that there's a lot of people who own free and clear that are going to choose to self-insure
Yeah,
who
that's
can't
definitely happening.
cash that check if they have to.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
And the worst part about that is it's a lot of senior citizens that are being forced to do that
Hmm.
because they're on fixed income.
Exactly. And like here in New Orleans, if that house next door, either one of them here in my house in Mid City, is if either one of them caught on fire, I'd be at risk, right?
Hmm.
And if they don't have insurance, now the block is at risk,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Like your neighbors are at
Yeah.
risk because
Yep.
of how tight we are. And
Hmm.
so there's a level there that this is, I'm just, Lord willing, the rest of this hurricane season, comes through, sits down and behaves and doesn't act up, or we don't have any, things like that, because
Right.
I do fear that a lot of people are, they're betting that they can self-insure for a period of time
And I
or
think
underinsure for a period
and
of
I
time.
think a lot of it is they don't have a choice.
Hmm.
They just can't afford it. That is their only option.
So I
If the
do,
house is paid for, they're like, I'm just.
yeah,
I mean, I've heard it from talking to people
yeah,
face to face. They're like, I don't have a choice. I just can't afford it. I'm gonna
yeah.
have to risk it.
Or a landlord who is selling right now who's like, they're self-insured and they're like, here, here's my numbers. So like if I'm looking at I remember when I was under contract buying a 45 unit motel, and when we looked at the numbers, I was like, send me your insurance policy. Now this was 2 or 3 years ago. So, but even still, I said, send me your insurance policies, and they sent me one. On a motel, you're supposed to have at minimum 4 policies. And I was like, where's the rest? So like, well, we don't have. It was literally just liability only. They weren't even protecting the
Yeah.
building. And I'm like, and the liability was 500,000. I don't know. This was a 1 point, I think we were under 1.2 million purchase price, and they had less than 500,000. And there was 3 overdoses while we were under contract on this thing. And
Oh wow.
I'm like, y'all have bigger cojones than I do, because like, how do you sleep at night having 500,000 liability policy when people are like ODing left and right in your
Mhm.
little anyway. But like, they weren't even protecting the building,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So
crazy.
if it caught on fire,
Done for,
they
yeah.
were done for. And they were like, "Here, we make so much money." I was like, "No, you don't. You're just not paying for the right things. Like you're not
Right.
paying for things you have to pay for." So that's also like something when it comes to actually running numbers. It's like, look, I've got to, like, this affects me. I've got to pay attention to
Mhm.
this. And
Hmm.
so um
And even the cost of builder's risk has gone up too.
yeah,
You
so
know,
like renovations, yeah. So the other big thing is 2024 is a reassessment year for property taxes.
mhm.
Now,
I just got letters
Orleans,
in the mail.
I am building up my spreadsheet right now of all my properties, and I so every 4 years, tax collectors, tax assessors, they have to reassess. The assessors have to reassess, and the only parish that's different is Orleans because they do it in advance. Everyone else does it in arrears.
We
Right.
actually been through Orleans
So
as
Orleans
well. Yeah.
was last year, and everyone got in an uproar. It was,
Hmm.
so that was a precursor for what we're seeing now in every other parish. What are you guys seeing with that? Either on your rentals, the sellers, your buyers,
I just
whatever.
got a few letters in the mail in Jefferson Parish, and none of them actually increased very much. Two of them stayed the same. One of them went up a small amount.
Yeah, I must say, I might similar. But see, so I don't know. I might have a skewed view because I do a lot of burr. So I actually find I get really good tax assessments because I'm buying super low. I'm
Mhm,
buying at 70% of ARV minus repairs.
mhm,
So that can be like 40, 50% of ARV, and that's what's recorded. So they see that sale,
mhm.
and it tends to bring my property down. So none of my assessments are over my appraised value. They're mostly significantly below, and they went up not that much. So, but I don't know if that's the view of the market.
Yeah,
I did go through Orleans. I was in Jefferson and St. Tammany and stuff. I went through Orleans. I did successfully contest my personal residence.
that was for Orleans last year.
That's for Orleans because yeah, because you pay in
And that was
advance.
more so, and people have to realize that, like, literally the state requires every 4 years to reassess. The last time was 2020, and a lot has happened price wise since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's an actual process for people to appeal it, and it, varies by parish on when that time period is. So when
Yeah.
you did it for Orleans, why? I don't suggest people just go appeal because they hate taxes and government, because, well,
I
but
feel I feel
yours was for a good reason.
well. I peeled a couple. So I did appeal a couple of my rentals, sort of just on spec. They shot me down, and I didn't complain, to be honest with you, because I'm like, yeah, okay, my personal residence. The valuation actually wasn't that bad. It was actually less than my appraised value,
But
but
it was the
they had
principal.
my square footage wrong. They had 500 extra square foot. So I'm like, how can, if that's what you appraise it, like you need to adjust that with my square footage, and that was very difficult. So
Like your data's wrong, inherently
yeah,
wrong.
and then they didn't like, for me. I thought it was a pretty clear cut argument, and I still think it was, but they didn't want to accept it. So I went through the appeals process, through Orleans Parish. There's two levels, and they rejected me. I'm like, how can you reject me when you're wrong?
Square footage
Like,
is clearly off.
yeah, I appealed to the state.
And 500 foot,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
500 square foot, not like 50.
So I appealed to the state, and they came and like they agreed. I showed them my floor plan because I didn't show my appraisal, but I showed them the floor plan from the appraisal. And I could clearly demonstrate it was wrong, and she agreed. So she made a recommendation of a lower price to them, and they rejected it again.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, what is like? And I was speaking to like just I'm like, come measure my house. I just thought it was.
What is their reason for rejecting it?
Well, I mean, there wasn't one. I see. I think they're just trying to cling on to the tax dollars. Like, so, like, for me, it was very like I was speaking to them. I'm like, can't you see it's wrong? So like, you should just change it. Like, you should just do the right thing and change it.
Right.
And they wouldn't want it. I think they hold on to the tax dollars. And then I had a court case scheduled, and they called me like the day before, and they said that's settled, and they gave me what the other person said. I got a 300K reduction. And the little side benefit is they took a while to register the new bill, and then when they did that, they took my homestead exemption off. Like, well, like what? Like I had it on Howie, and so then I complained again, and they put the homestead exemption on. So then I only just got the bill this month.
They should, yeah, I was gonna say.
So I actually got like I got like
longer period of
I got
time.
like 8 months extra to pay it.
Because
no
of their-
penalty. So
because of their
and I
inefficiencies.
wasn't gonna pay it early because like I was pissed at them because like they were just not being reasonable at all. So
Yeah, so a lot of my stuff's on the North Shore. I will say that, like, I mean, so I researched my family's properties, and I've started going through all of mine, and it's my family meaning like my siblings' homes, my mom's home, and like my mom's home, it went up $100,000 in value, which equals almost $1,000 in property taxes on her homestead primary residence, and so, but like, so we're seeing stuff like that. The other big thing is it's important to note that the values are based off of 2022 numbers. The dates are, and I don't have them in front of me, but it's, if I remember right, January 1st to July of 2022, which the market was still very hot. And so, but what we're seeing on Facebook is a lot of people are getting their renewals right now, or their reassessments, not their renewals, their reassessments, and they're like, what the heck? My house, I'm trying to sell it, and I can't sell it for what they're saying it's worth, because prices might be contracting some, not crashing, but contracting, but yet my cost, my assessed value is going up, and so people are getting pissed, but they're not realizing that it's not based off of today's data. They're like, well, let me go get comps from right now, how prices are going down. I'm like, you can do that, but literally the Louisiana state law is requiring them to go off of 2022 data.
That's when prices were definitely elevated.
well, I mean, Lance Lambert from Resi Club, he coined this term which I like. He called it the pandemic boom echo, because we had the boom of the property prices going up, which we all felt, but now the boom echo is that the insurances are now going up.
So it's like all the like unintended consequences of those prices that were really high during 2021.
Yeah, you got the high price, but the taxes hadn't changed. So now the property tax has changed.
Yeah.
And then also the insurance is changing too, not just because
whether it's just replacement cost, whether it's
obviously we were talking about Louisiana specific, but just more nationally, it's just the inflation, construction costs. So he's coined that the boom echo. It's like, yeah, the boom's over, but like these are the echoes that are coming through. And I think
Lingering
that's
effects.
Yeah, and it's true.
Yeah. I mean, if I remember right, the first case of COVID here in the New Orleans area was March 2020. And so 2 years after that, pretty much, well, I guess there was a few month lag after the first case was reported before the market took off. But then you had a 2-year time frame where everything was just shooting up like a rocket, So if they're going off of 2022, that's probably when things were at the peak or damn near it.
So there's literally tax assessors have built in an option. If your tax bill has increased 50%, over 50%, you can do a staggered bill payment. Basically, instead of it immediately jumping, we'll like stagger it for the next 2 years.
Your increases.
Yep.
Kind of like FEMA did after risk rating 2.0.
Yeah.
Max of
Yes,
18% per
yes,
year
yes.
until it hits the new
So it's
premium.
kind of one of those things where it's like, it's for some people it's so much of an increase that they're having to build in some sort of like, this help, this payment plan. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what that shakes out to with people's cash flow for investors, people's affordability once things start to really shake out. People, once they have their their escrow analysis on their mortgages and their mortgage payments adjust. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what that actually plays out to.
Here currently, and I'm sure y'all have heard the same thing, I've talked to more people than I can count at this point who have told me that because their insurances are escrowed in, and this is before some of the property tax increases too, that their payment has gone up $600, $800, $1,000 a month. And a lot of the people I've talked to are like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I can't afford this.
Well, a lot of that too is it's gone up even more because the insurance went up. But they took a while to adjust do an escrow analysis. So there's also in that time when they adjusted, there's a shortage. So it's gone up a lot
because
it's like, yeah, here's your new payment, but also you got to pay us for all this shortage for the last 6 months. So some of those increases have been pretty harsh.
Now, as someone who buys creatively, so one of the big things I can buy what's subject to. So I can go buy in at that 3%, the 2% loan. But like I bought one where the payment was $1,700 but it had a negative $6,000 escrow balance, and when it came back, it was $2,300. Well, it rents for $2,300, and so until that resets, I'm at a loss. And I sold a property that was it had a $900 a month increase with insurance, and I sold it because it was like one of those things where I was like I didn't want to keep it, and it was not worth the loss for that, and I was thankfully able to sell it, right? And but there's a level there. A lot of people can't. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and so these increases. I mean, we're seeing credit card debt. Really people are pressed, and so the other big
debt all-time high recently.
I mean, but we're seeing things, people, the other big thing is, people are talking about equity, but I tell agents all the time, and I think investors who are buying off market need to keep this in mind, is what's called a seller net. Yeah. You want to explain what a seller net is?
For listed properties?
Sure, just in general.
For a listed property, it's just going to be what the seller walks away from the closing table with, after all of their cost and expenses associated with selling the property.
I think moving forward that this is going to be one of the most critical parts to anything actually closing. A lot of mortgage brokers, title companies, agents, a lot of people across the board have been telling me that they're having, even Steve, I've seen it with you guys as well with closing wholesale deals, is everyone's having to work so much harder for less deals. Now, I'm not saying like everyone's doing less deals, but it's just deals are harder and harder to to get across closing table. But a big part here is with that seller net. I share the example of an agent came to me, said, hey, I have a seller who owes 200. They really need to sell. We're listed at 330, come make an offer. I'm like, well, just drop the price, right? And long story short, I ran a pre-screen though. They thought they only owed one mortgage for 200. Reality, they had 3 mortgages and 5 liens and judgments. And so the idea there is, I think that some people are getting squished with that equity that they think they have, because maybe they got behind on some payments, and so they did maybe a loan modification, and so now they have a second or a third, something like that. So let's time to pull out our crystal balls. What do we think the next 6 months in the greater New Orleans area is going to look like?
Well, as of right now, for the GNO area as a whole, our inventory levels of the number of houses for sale, as far as listed properties goes, is rising faster than we're actually closing transactions, which has caused our month supply, which month supply in the simplest terms for people that don't know what it means is basically just, if no new listings were to hit the market, how long would it take all of us realtors to sell the available active listings that are out there right now? So 6 months is generally considered a neutral, balanced market where prices kind of flatten out. They don't go up, they don't go down, they kind of just hang where they're at. If you're below 6 months, you're in a seller's market, and prices tend to rise. You've got high demand, low inventory, Econ 101, prices go up. Once you get 7+ months of supply, prices start to go down. We're currently sitting at about 6 months supply, which technically would be a neutral balance market, but like we were saying, it's behaving much more like a buyer's market. And actually, if you look at the month-to-month data, the month supply is much higher.
Well, but then you have a lot of sellers who are just not selling because where are they going to go?
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
But we have many, many more homes on the market right now than we would normally have at this time of year. But as far as the number of actual closed sales, it's not far, it's not really that far off. If you look at the dollar volume, if you go back to 2019, 2018, it's roughly the same dollar volume. The same number of sales have happened currently as compared to the pre-pandemic years. But I think we're in a situation where we may see inventory levels rise further as we approach the end of the year, the holiday season. Things always slow down towards the end of the year. So we may see months of supply jump up a good bit higher and potentially prices come down.
Steve, what about you? What does your crystal ball say for the next 6 months?
So I think the next 6 months will be bad, but I personally think that's good, and I'll explain what I mean by that on two levels. So, firstly, I personally believe that the property market's been in recession for three years, and when I say recession, I'm not talking about price. Everyone's fixated on the prices. The prices have been up to flat or a little bit down, but the transaction volumes have been lower, and that's hurting realtors, title companies, mortgage brokers, like everyone, flippers, and not moving fast. So I think it's been pretty bad because of interest rates and insurance. But the price has been pretty resilient given the interest rates, by the way. Like, it's actually been pretty interesting. So I think that the next 6 months are going to be tough. Rates are starting to fall. I do believe they'll come down. We have Jackson Hole this week, and I think you're going to start to see them go down. But I think it's too late to say this market, as Braden will always say, like, it's a very seasonal market. So we've had the peak season. We're in the natural decline. So I think the interest rates coming down is too late to help. I think that the election is going to keep people's hands on their, just, they're not going to make any moves. I don't think the policy is going to affect the housing market so much, but like, they're talking about home credits and all this stuff. And so there's a lot of indecision. If I'm want to buy, don't I want to wait to see what happens, see who's in power, see if there's something
That can benefit me.
So I think the next 6 months are going to be really bad as a seller. I also think it's going to be really good as a buyer because I
I
think there's
definitely think
deals
there'll
that
be some buying
on
opportunities.
the MLS too. I deal off market. I deal with like those sort of good deals all the time. But I think even on MLS, there's going to be a lot of motivated sellers, and I think that it will get better after that. But because for me, it's like it's darkest before the dawn, and I think properties had that 3 year of recession because of interest rates, because property is the most interest rate sensitive sector in the economy. Now the actual economy itself is starting to crack. The unemployment we mentioned, so the economy is actually cracking. So I think the economy is going to get worse. But when the economy gets worse, the interest rates will come down. So I think property is a first in the recession. It's going to be the first out, and that excites me because I think at the top we talk about sellers being unrealistic. I think the sellers will get more realistic soon because the economy is going to crack and they're going to feel that pain. They're going to feel that desire, and when they start realizing, it's actually the best time. It's actually the bottom of the market. Like, it's like so as an investor, I'm like, I think that's the most exciting time. Just if you can ignore, if people say the world's falling in again, be greedy when everyone's fearful. If everyone's fearful, that's exciting. It's the end. Even if prices drop, if the prices come down 5-10%, but prices come down, interest rates come down, affordable transactions. Let's go, do your deals, get set up. That next cycle's gonna be nice.
Yeah. I truly believe the next the end of this year into Mardi Gras, which you're right, like pretty much the greater New Orleans is post Mardi Gras. People wait until after Mardi Gras to go house shopping. Post Mardi Gras to the end of August is usually our peak time. But so I do think that we're going to go into a dark time. So there's going to be a lot of people who are in the industry. It's going to be enough for them to get out. They're not going to have enough, food to put on the table with income. I think closings are going to be more transactions are going to fall through, whatever, or just whatever that looks like. But I also think it's going to be a time for certain people to really be able to move forward. So I think specifically when people in the industry work with investors, now is going to be the time, or aggressive buyers, people who are thinking less emotionally and more strategically. And so I definitely think that, I agree. I think people are going to hold off with the election. I think they're going to say, well, what might I think affordability is a huge, inflation, the economy, affordability is all a huge talking point. So what's going to happen? And hey, instead of I make a decision now, let me make a decision when they figure out what's going to happen, who's going to be in offense, and what are they going to promise. Just some things like that. So I definitely think those things are coming. So as we start getting closer to wrap this up, defense for investors right now who are in the game, how do they stay in the game? What are your suggestions for investors who are wanting to, if they're in the greater New Orleans market, they want to keep owning what they have, but hey, the boat's a little rocky because insurance and hey, maybe I had to come down on my rent, just to get it rented out faster. Property tax going up, things like that. What are y'all's suggestions?
You take the lead on this one.
Weather the storm. I mean, you need stay alive to 25. Like I think you need to have cash reserve. We've been saying it, like it's sort of late in the game, so it's hard to really the time to
It's a
prepare
hard
was
time to prepare,
earlier.
yeah.
You needed to build cash reserves. You need to be fine. If you need, it's a bad spot to need to sell. If you need to sell. I mean, if you really need to sell now. Drop your price, move it. But if you can afford not to, like maybe even if you're losing some cash flow, if you can just take a little bit of negative cash flow for a period, wait until the market picks up. Should be next year,
Even if a property is negative 200 a month, right? Even at negative 200 a month, that's 2,400 a year, versus you might have to drop it tens of thousands to move it.
100%. And even so, I'll have a look at it. So the insurance finally shifted some of my properties negative, right? So some of my portfolio is
some of
negative.
mine too.
But I tell you, I look at my amortization. None of them are negative versus my amortization. So it might be negative, 1,000 over the year on cash flow, but I'm amortizing like $2,500. So it's like most people go, oh, I'm losing money, and you are like you're losing cash, but it's a forced saving. Like I actually am making money because I'm getting more equity. So you're better off to survive that, and then sell. Obviously, if you can't survive it, you have to fire sale. That's a bad position to be in. If you're in that position, I'd probably fire sale now. Do it now. Shoot early. Don't if you can't wait till this season, spring season next year. Do it now. If you can wait to spring, wait to spring.
Yeah. I pretty much agree with everything Steve said. Like I've been dealing with that same stuff with some of my properties, where insurance has pushed me negative on one or two, or I'm barely breaking even, or just got like a tiny bit of cash flow, and it's like, do I sell this thing? Do I hold on to it? But then I'm like, I got a bunch of equity in it. I'd rather just sit on it and keep building that equity, like you said, especially if you've got a low interest rate, lower than you could get now. Like Steve said, you got forced savings, basically. Look at it that way. But if you get yourself in a bind where you really have to sell, be prepared that you're going to take a hit on it, probably, especially if you wait till the later months of this year when the demand drops off.
Exactly. And ultimately, I'm a big believer that, you can't have offense without defense, and too many people only played offense. And Steve, you're right, the time to prepare for right now and literally the two things that are saving me with my deals who are not going as planned is cash in the bank and equity. If you bought marginal deals without equity, so as a creative investor, a lot of people are getting into like subject to deals without equity or negative equity day one. I'm like, it might get way worse for you, as far as that equity point goes. But then, if you've got equity, you might be able, Steve and I were talking about this, it might be easier to get capital from a second mortgage if you can handle, or if you can be creative. We've got some free and clear properties that we're like, let's go get a loan on it. It's not gonna be a great interest rate, but let's go do it because it's gonna be easier to get capital that way versus a sale right now. And so, looking at some things like that, but so defense is important. That cash in the bank, I'm being very cautious with what I say yes to. I'm being, I sold some, I wholesaled a property that I wish I would have kept. But I knew I needed that cushion in the bank to, continue on. Now let's talk through, and I think it's investors to say that you're not alone if you're having a hard time with your, we all have had properties that are either breaking even or negative right now. We all have had properties that were we hoped it would sell for this, but it's now, less. But the big thing there is just be careful. Don't get into marginal deals. This is not the time for speculation. No. Marginal deals, I hope it'll do this,
Definitely don't bank on appreciation, which you shouldn't do anyway.
No, you shouldn't. And so Now, let's talk through offense. What do we think the play is for investors right now in this market? Like, if someone is like, hey, I have cash in the bank, hey, I can handle these rough waters, what might be the opportunity?
I think, if you can buy with a medium to longer term outlook, this is a great time to be in the market. If you need to buy and sell like soon, like if you have
So,
to
like
sell,
flipping.
if you need to flip and it needs to sell in the next 6 months, like that's dangerous right now. But if you can buy, if you can hold on for 12 months or longer, hopefully, but like I think it's a great time to buy
Yeah.
because the people have to sell. Like we said, they have to take that hit.
Yeah.
You can be on the benefit side of taking that hit. I just encourage people to remember what it was like in 2021, how hard it was to buy a deal,
Yeah.
how much you had to overpay, you had to give away all your right. Like, it was so hard. So right now is the opposite. So if you're banking on getting a quick sale, that's dangerous. But if you can afford to weather the storm, buy and hold, like now is the time to acquire. Obviously creative. I'm sure I'll let you talk to that. But like anything, if you have a strategy to be able to buy and sit and hold it, it's a great time to buy.
Yeah. What about
Yeah,
you?
I agree. And I do think that there's going to be some good buying opportunities coming up. Like I said, with the demand falling off as we approach the end of the year and the supply levels rising, you may have even better buying opportunities as we approach the end of the year because we have more homes on the market than we normally would at that time of
Yeah.
year. So buyers will have more to choose from, as they already do, but they may have even more to choose from. And if mortgage rates go down, then that'll definitely help things as well. Personally, I think they got to get down into the fives to even spur some activity, but it could be 5.9, and it's still going to, just that leading five is going to spur some activity. I'm not too confident that we will see them get into the fives before the end of the year, though. I think they're going to kind of hang around the 6.5 where they've been into beginning of next year.
I had that conversation I put it out on my Facebook. I said, guys, do we think that rate cuts is going to basically drive this crazy stampede of buyers? Do y'all want to talk through that real quick?
I mean, I sort of agree, but like I do at five. I think if we get a five handle, that makes it really strong for people to come in and buy and sell, because lots of like what we've really lost from this market is the move up buyer. Because most people, unless you're a new home buyer or an investor, when you sell, you buy.
Yeah.
And so lower.
You got to go somewhere.
Lower interest rates will help them. They're going to make a sale and they're going to buy a property. So I think that'll unlock the market. I do think if we even keep low sixes for duration, I think it'll help. I think fives will make it much hot. Not hot 21, but it will, and not hot prices. I think just activity.
Yeah, more activity for sure.
But my caveat is I don't think it'll change this year. I think we're too late into the bad season and with the election, like we said. So even if it dropped to 5.5%, like now, which it won't, but if it did, I think you'll get some marginal demand, sure, but it's not going to be a stampede.
I agree.
But I think next year, if we keep it should start to get lower and stay low, because every time it's gone low, it's sprung back up. If it can start to go down towards the end of the year, stay down into next year, I think that spring buying selling season will be really nice. So, but I don't think even with the low rates, it just needs it needs to stay and it'll kick in that season.
Yeah. I think ultimately that people think, I hear agents say it all the time, the minute rates go down, people are just going to flood the streets trying to buy. I think it's not enough. It's not just interest rates. A monthly payment is what is impacting affordability. So there also needs to be some improvements with insurance
Yeah,
and
it's not
property
just the
taxes.
mortgage rates.
Yeah, and so if insurance and property taxes are not improving, then we need a bigger improvement on interest rate.
And not to mention just inflation and everything else,
Sure.
15 items at the grocery store is $100+ now,
I know. I've got to go shopping later. Don't remind me.
As an investor in property, and I hate to say it too, but the other variable is a little bit of price. Like I think I think where everyone's expecting this interest rates drop, prices go crazy. I don't necessarily think so. It's possible, but maybe the prices
People's buying power is not what it used to be, and interest rates are not the only buying power.
So it could be like this. Could be interest rates drop, maybe prices do come down 5%, 10%. You know what I mean? But then transaction, that's a good thing. Like that's and again, if you don't need to sell right now, it's the equity is not real. So if you can hold on, like the price is coming down, think everything's gonna buy, sell later.
Yeah.
in the 2021 type markets.
Yeah.
One thing I always say is that a thing, anything, whether it be a house, a car, whatever, is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
And that is based on supply and demand, and mainly demand. So if demand increases greatly, then prices could remain elevated or even go up further. But if demand continues to be depressed, then we may see prices go down, especially when the supply is coming up. But it's all basically comes down to supply and demand at the end of the day.
Yeah. So, but no 2008 crash.
No,
Oh no,
no.
like zero chance. Just the
No,
whole
people have too
the
much
whole
equity now.
The whole setup's different. Also, too, I think the low rates is a feature of this new market, and that's why the transactions have frozen.
Yeah.
Like in 2008, everyone had variable mortgages, so the mortgage rates were going up, and the values came down, and so they sent in the keys. You don't want to send in your keys right now. Like you've actually got a low mortgage rate. Like you have an asset. Like if
Yeah.
you can sit on it, it's
Yeah.
beneficial.
So, I think what the stat was, of the mortgaged properties out there, if someone has a mortgage, 1 in 4 have something below 3%, 3% or below. I mean, that's huge. And so it's kind of like one of those things, well, if you can't afford that, what will you afford? And so you're going to do everything you can to afford that. But I also will say that those low interest rates have also prolonged any major impacts with insurance crisis, affordability impact. Like that stuff has actually, you know, ultimately, like what I've been saying with the insurance crisis, the longer that the insurance crisis exists in our area, the more collateral damage. But we've actually been protected to a degree because the insulation of those low interest rates, right?
Hmm.
If people had a lot more people have higher interest rates, a lot more people would have been struggling.
For
Yep.
sure, and that's why I don't. That's why there's not going to be an '08 type crash because think about it. Like
Yeah, it's not apples to
it's
apples.
actually pretty amazing. Like the interest rates went up so fast, like so quickly, and property prices have been really resilient. If the property prices would have crashed, it would have been in these 3 years. As these things start playing out,
Those
the
echoes.
the
Yeah.
interest rates are going to come down. So it's like it's going to help. Like so it saved us. It kept us here, but it crashed transactions. Didn't crash prices. It crashed transactions. But like as the economy goes bad, the interest rates will come down. So that's a
Yeah.
cushion, which is why we're never going to see an '08
So you've
crash.
made a great distinction. A lot of people they think of '08 because of the crash in prices, but you're saying right now what people should expect is the crash in transactions, which we've been seeing, and that's really the big impact that we're seeing is can you survive with the lack of movement in the market
Yeah.
or like a limited
But
movement?
remember what I said earlier, if you look at the dollar volume of sales in the whole greater New Orleans area, it's right almost exactly the same as it was in
That's
2018 and
interesting.
2019, which is when I saw that, I'm like, it doesn't feel like it,
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
interesting.
Sure. So I guess the three strategies I'm looking at for the to kind of wrap up that question from um, right now, what I'm focusing on is number one, this is a time that I'm going because I do believe there's going to be opportunity between now and Mardi Gras. Is that I'm actually going to go shop and improve my primary. Now, as a creative real estate investor, I'm also planning to buy it subject to or with seller financing. So I can manipulate the market by getting a lower interest rate. But I am saying this is a good time for me to improve my primary,
Mhm.
right? So to go get a nice house in a nice neighborhood, at a discount with built-in financing. The second thing is relative to my rentals, I'm also buying the better properties in the better areas. They may not cash flow or they may have a little bit of negative cash flow, but I'm able to get into great properties that I otherwise, they're not normally for sale that I could buy as an investment.
Mhm.
And then the third thing is that I am open. So I predominantly buy with creative financing. So either like the seller, their existing financing, something like that. Um, but I also buy with private money. So everyday individuals who want to fund my deals. For the first time, I've always really just used them for like just generally like an interest rate for the first time ever. I'm actually looking at more equity based loans versus interest, meaning they're more of a partner in the deal versus just a lender.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to pay them 8, 9, 10%, well, I might say, hey, for the sake of cash flow, let's deal more in equity versus in like the monthly payment with cash flow.
Yeah.
Right.
And so instead of me having to pay you, based on amortization schedule, something like that, it's a little bit more creative structuring of my loans. And, back when, I could get a 5%, 6%, 7% loan from a private money lender back when interest rates were low, I didn't need to do this. But now where, cash flow is difficult, interest rates are higher, I'm actually thinking more creatively with funding sources. So, because you can play offense all day, but if you can't fund it, I mean, what are you going to do?
Equity makes it
Right.
much safer as an investment, obviously, and then you're giving the investor the upside. So they're getting a better deal on the upside, but they're taking a little bit more risk, or they're waiting
Yeah.
for their payment. So that's smart.
Any final thoughts as we start to land here, whether you want to speak to sellers, to buyers, to investors, or just something that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to? Great.
Sorry, Brady.
Um, you go ahead, because
Because you were about to
I was
rattle
ready. I was
something
ready.
up.
you had something ready. I need a
Well,
minute.
I was just gonna echo. I think it's a buyer's market. Like the buyer's market is here. I think if you're smart, if you see the time to acquire, just please, please, please keep ahead. When everyone's fearful, be greedy. Don't fall for the fear. But be safe. Make good purchases. And we'll just summarize what we said before. If you are in trouble, I think you said lots of people are in trouble. I've spoken to lots of people that are in trouble, so you're not alone. We've had our own deals too that we've worked through. Like, don't be stressed. If you have to sell now, discount, sell fast, don't wait. If you have to sell in the next 6 months, sell now. If you can wait 6 months, wait for spring, wait for spring.
Stay
Yeah.
alive till
Stay
25.
alive till
Yeah.
25.
I'd say if you're like a retail buyer out there right now, you want to, number one, shop lenders. They're all going to give you different rates and terms, and tell them that you're shopping lenders so that they're incentivized to give you the best rate and terms they can. Just like anything else, if you're going to get an electrician or a plumber or somebody to do something at your house, you're not going to go with the first person that gives you an estimate. You're going to get 2 or 3 estimates, and then you're going to choose from there. It's the same thing with mortgage lenders. You want to do the same thing with agents as well. Interview 2 or 3 agents and decide which one you want to go with. Everything's negotiable with agents, and then lenders have a lot of leeway in what they charge as well. And they can waive some fees, and they will if they know they're competing for your business also.
Yeah.
Um, and then also, once you get into actually shopping for houses, one thing that I've advised all my buyer clients to do for quite some time now is if you have a house you're interested in, you want to make an offer on it, we're going to get an insurance quote first before we even write the offer,
Yeah.
because it might come back so high you're like, never mind, I don't want that house. So
Yeah.
it's wise to get an insurance quote up front for both homeowners and flood if flood is required. But even if it's not required, I would still recommend getting it since we are below sea level here. I think
Mhm.
it's always wise to have flood insurance. And even on the listing side, I've been telling buyer agents that they say, I'm going to send you an offer. I say, did your client get an insurance quote? And they say, no. I said, well, then don't send me the offer till you get the quote, because
Yeah.
I want to make sure that they're good with the quote,
Yeah.
because I don't want
It's
to
good
go into
practice.
contract and
Yeah.
have to come back on the market, because now my listing gets a stigma
Yeah.
from coming back on the market multiple times. So those are some basic advice I'd give for both buyers and sellers out there. For sellers on the listing side, as we were talking earlier, just like with flippers, your product's important. Take the time to make sure your curb appeal looks good, that you touch up things here and there. The days of just throwing anything on the market and it selling quickly are gone, and expect it to take longer to sell now.
Yeah.
But you want to present your house in the best light possible. So if you can afford to make some touch ups and some minor repairs, do those things before you list it.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I think for me, I think on the investor side, it's, you know, the good news is there's bad news, meaning, again, you're right. It's always either a very hard time to buy, but a great time to sell, vice versa. But the other part of that is when there's bad news, it's not forever, and so if
Right.
you can survive. So what does that look like? This is where I think your network really is going to matter. Going in, we did that mastermind recently with the St. Bernard meetup. That was great. Just go and see what other people are seeing. Don't get so pigeonholed that, hey, I'm doing, I'm alone. I'm the only one that's suffering right now. But then find ways, hey, what are some creative ways I can do this? I do think your skill sets matter right now too. If all you're used to is bank funding, you should consider other sources and just have more tools in the tool belt. Um, I'm able to get deals done right now where a lot of other investors can't, just simply because I have more skills in my tool bag to be able to make an offer to fund a deal. Now, ultimately, um, if someone wants to reach out to you guys, um, you know, what's the best way that they can do that?
You just Google my name, I'll pop up somewhere. I'm all over the internet, but I'm with Gino Realty and the investment companies Revitalized Property Solutions. So The easiest way to get in touch with me is either my cell or email. My cell's 504-621-1729.
Okay, sounds good. We'll put it in the show notes, Steve.
I like Braden. Google me, baby.
Yeah.
Best way would be my website's homebuylouisiana.com. You can find me through there. If you're an investor looking for off-market deals, you can email me at deals@homebuylouisiana.com. Tell me what you're looking for, and we can find you deals. Or if you want to chat, I'm always down to chat business.
Yeah. And I'll make sure to include your Facebook. Both of you guys' stuff. You guys know if you want to connect with me further, go to CourtneyFricke.com. Well, I've enjoyed today's conversation, you guys. I appreciate having you
Thanks
guys.
for having
Enjoy
us.
too.
And just talking about the greater New Orleans market. Look, some things are bleak, but at the same time, there's also some good things going on. And I think it's good for people to talk about it in a way that it's a conversation, not just maybe some people might be more data centric where they're like, just show me the data, don't talk about it. But like, I think some people also can benefit from us talking about it too.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate having you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Braden.